This is day 1 of the August 90 7-day retreat at Springwater. On the first day, during the first talk, we always speak about authority, listening to a talk, and questioning right from the beginning, what is our relationship with each other? The listener with the one who is talking, sitting there in the solarium, waiting for a meeting and coming into the meeting room. What is our relationship? Since there are many people in this retreat who have not been to a retreat here before, it is especially important to talk about all this. But maybe it's just as important for all of us to look at this forever freshly and not think we have talked about it in the past. I know what she's saying, I agree with her or disagree with her, and that's that. Because the beauty of a talk like this, in a wide, spacious, bright room, sitting here together, is that we can examine from the start anew what it is that we're talking about. One does not have to go on what Toni said in the past, or what I understood her to have said in the past, or our past agreements or disagreements. The beauty of living is to look freshly now and see whether what is actually so or a projection of this mind and memory. So, in talking, there is no willful exertion of authority upon the people who are sitting here. I do not regard myself as an authority, but as a person who is looking, who has devoted her life and is devoting herself to looking and questioning, alone as well as together with people who are interested. Looking clearly and seeing if what is being seen can be expressed clearly enough so that we can look at the same thing together at the same time. And this looking and seeing and questioning is a mutual process, a shared, participated thing. It's tricky because we have learned since school days, earliest of school days, to listen to somebody lecture. And we've been impressed with the fact from the earliest of times that the person who sits in front of a group, or sits higher or taller, is someone to believe or to disbelieve, to fight with or to follow. Mostly to follow, to believe that what he or she is saying must be true due to the position she is in or the experiences he has had. What others have said or written about him or her. authority bestowed by clerical hierarchy. And that is not conducive to looking and questioning for oneself, to reawaken those faculties that we've all had when we were very little, to look directly for ourselves. A little baby didn't need mom or dad to show him what to look at or to point out to her what to look at. Even though that's what we do as parents. We say, look at this, look at that. Recently there was a baby here and a person on staff to just relieve the mother for a while so she could eat of this little 7-month-old baby and probably to get a hold of himself. Walked up to the pond with this little 7-month-old baby, and he said, I could not keep up with the baby. Here he turned his head, there he looked, and what was he looking at? What did he hear? So, can there be a new beginning in looking and questioning for ourselves? Not thinking, I can't do it, I need her, I need someone to guide me in this. Of course we're here to look together, to question together, but that's an infinitesimal time. Most of the time we're on our own and very much under the influence of our conditioning and the conditioning of the people that surround us. And there's often the feeling I can't do this by myself. It's impossible. I need someone to guide me. And yet, when this happens, that there's a direct listening, a direct seeing, there's also the realization no one has done that for me. I haven't even done it myself. It just happens. There's no doing, is there, in listening to the crows, the crickets? Boom. And the breathing that is taking place in one way or another at all times in a human being. Does that take effort or guidance to listen to it? Or is it just there? So if from the very outset we could abstain, if possible, from seeing each other in certain stereotypical ways, so that when we do sit together, talk together, there can be a mutual looking and listening and questioning. Which does not depend on the thought, this person is my authority. That thought interferes. Can one see that for oneself? Listening to the sound of birds, the distant traffic, the crickets. Feeling of a cool breeze every once in a while. It's there, isn't it? When the mind is open to perceive in a fresh and innocent way. Not I must do it, I ought to do it, or I can't do it. But just what's there, and listening, looking. Because it's not just to the things that happen on the so-called outside world, but inwardly all the thoughts that arise and the emotional reactions that are triggered by thoughts arising in the mind from memory. Can there be a simple awareness of that? When it happens, not I should be aware. Most of the time, the mind is caught up in its own thoughts and not aware that there is thinking going on, and therefore thoughts taking on a tremendous illusion of reality, as though what one is thinking were real, like the reflection of myself in the mirror, as though that was real, that reflection, but it's just a reflection. The mind, the thought does not have that capacity to see itself thinking. Something else has to happen, come into being, which is awareness. But that's just a word. Awareness itself, what the word refers to, is not thinking about thought, but the realization that there was a thought in the mind and how it triggered all kinds of feelings. Fearful ones, joyful ones, scary ones, angry ones. And a listening to this created sensation, feeling, emotion within the body and mind, listening to that like to the buzzing meadow. For moments at a time, not to be ambitious for forever, for a long time, for longer than last time. These are all thoughts of measurement, which interfere immediately as they arise with the immediacy of perception, of a thought and the resulting fear or anger or discomfort or pleasure. So, we said a little bit earlier, the difficulty in listening to someone verbalizing, which I'm doing right now, the difficulty is to remain at that verbal level, which is what we've been trained and educated to do. Listen to the words, absorb them, incorporate them, memory traces developing, and then think from that memory. And what is asked here is whether at the same time that there is listening to the words and a verbal understanding of what is being said, can there also be an inward, outward looking and listening? So that our relationship here does not proceed along a narrow one-track channel of verbal understanding, but the mind being open to question and wonder, look and listen to what's there, to what the words may be referring to directly. The word singing meadow is not what's happening, is it? The words are beautiful, they can be inspiring, and in their inspiration cause energies to flow that is observable. But the word singing meadow is not what's happening right now. What is happening right now apart from the words that we give to it? Can we listen? And if words do come up, people say, I cannot disassociate words from what it is that is seen or heard. then can one see a word that comes up? Not make a problem out of it? Crow, cricket, words, Toni, me, these are all words that come up. Can one see that? A word came up. And at the moment that the word came up, does the listening stop, sort of recede, or close down completely because now there's involvement with a word and the memory associations? I can't hear in the way that she's talking about. I'm probably not suited for this, not as good as the other people. They can do it. Maybe after 10 years I'll be able to do it. We go on and on and on about ourselves, talking to ourselves about ourselves in positive or negative ways. And with that talking to ourselves about ourselves in positive or negative ways, we affect ourselves immensely. Because this neurological chemical system of organism, which is sitting here, has evolved over years, is geared to respond to words and thoughts instantly. It's wired that way, conditioned or programmed this way. So the thought, I can't do it, or I'm a failure, immediately has chemical impact. Nervous, electrical, chemical impact on this whole system that we call our body. And if it wasn't noticed, if it did not come into awareness, what thought triggered these present feelings of discomfort, there's going to be concern over it, conflict with it. I don't want to feel this way. Why do I feel depressed? And taking this present feeling as a signal that there is really something to be depressed about or elated about. It works the same for positive as well as negative thoughts triggering energies and feelings within the body. It doesn't end there. It creates new thoughts, new considerations, new reactions, which create new chemical processes in the body. And so on and on and on. And then maybe, for who knows what reason, an instant of awareness. Of turbulence inside, thought processes in the mind. Maybe seeing the connection between them, maybe not seeing the connection between them. But a moment of awareness of the state of the organism. Usually this precious moment of awareness of the state of the organism and the surroundings is quickly overlaid by thoughts evaluating what has been glimpsed or felt or seen, evaluating it verbally. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm too much thinking, or I'm not attentive. And then the thing just continues because there is a reaction to this evaluation. Or resolution, I must become more attentive, which has an impact on the body. Conditioned in the past, I must do something. Yeah. A different reaction to that, then I'm a failure. Someone wrote in a magazine that I read a while ago that there are 30,000 chemicals circulating or available to this body. It's what this body is. A whole system of that. Either in balance or out of balance. So can one question benignly, gently, with some curiosity of what is going on, without getting into the fault-finding trip, the blaming, self-blaming or other blaming trip? Aware of that when it comes up, and noticing how that ends the inquiry, or the gentle looking at what is happening. Because looking and listening is not a matter of assigning blame or finding fault, but seeing clearly how we function from moment to moment. To see what is, and to live with what is, and live out of the clarity of that seeing what actually is. Which may be in essence what we label this work. Work is a difficult word too, because it already seems to call for tensing the muscles. I got to do some work here. But it is what was just said. Seeing clearly and simply, without fault-finding, what is, and living with that, learning about it as one goes. Living out of the clarity of seeing what is in oneself and each other and around us, without conflict, without thought, with its storylines creating conflict. It shouldn't be like that, it should be different. You should know better than that. We repeat all the things that have been said to us by teachers, parents, older brothers and sisters. All of these voices have become taped and programs in this mind that now runs off with practically the same potency with which it was once uttered to a little child, schoolgirl or schoolboy, or someone going to church or to temple, listening to the sermons. Having to reform to better ourselves. And all the while not in touch with what we are before reform, before this betterment sets in. Actually in being undividedly in touch with what is going on right now, the thoughts, the emotions, the anger, and the songs of birds and crickets, rustling of clothes and cushions, sound of traffic, and being undividedly with that, with undividedly meaning no one in conflict with it, no one knowing better, or criticizing, or clutching it. Just what's there, the simplicity of what's there. That may be the change from our ordinary way of not being with what is, but constantly fantasizing verbally or image-wise or a combination about the better state that we should achieve, the better person that we ought to be, which includes the bad person we are now, the idea of it, but not the direct touch with what's there. Why is that so difficult? The direct touch with what's there. Or maybe it's only all the ideas about it that make it difficult. With the ideas being noticed, aware of, seeing what they do, the connection to the chemicals in the body, seeing that. It's not so important to go with the ideas of me and good and bad. And with the abating of importance of our ideas about ourselves, there may be energy to look at what's there. Fear, wanting, greed, jealousy, competitiveness, all the stuff. Not the words, but the movements. Always triggered by thought and image and fantasy. And being in the full-blown presence of it, without allowing the ideal image that we have of ourselves to cause havoc in the looking. Because that's what an ideal image does. It causes havoc in the looking and listening. And oscillating between halfway looking what's there and then clinging to the ideal image of what I should represent to other people and to myself and to my God. If one believes in a God. And that's why it's painful to look at what is there, at what is discovered in oneself, at moments of attention. There's almost universally felt pain, sorrow at seeing what's there. But why is there pain and sorrow at seeing what is there? Because we don't want to be like that. We don't want to own it, to have it out in the open, at least in the open of this awareness here. No one says you have to start telling everybody about it. What one would tell everybody about is what is going on in everybody. Although people find it very helpful to share what they see, but then very often it becomes a verbal thing again, and one has an escape in verbalizing about it and doesn't need to look directly. I'm not saying it's necessarily so, but it very quickly happens as one puts into storyline what one sees in oneself. One can live with that story easier than with what's actually there. Don't agree and don't disagree, but can one look for oneself? What is said here is not said because I've studied someone. I'm looking here and with people who love to look together. And in that, all kinds of stuff is uncovered. And the joy of it is not what it is that is uncovered, but the discovery itself. That the mind is free to look and break through all kinds of barriers of conventional thinking about oneself. And what is good and what is bad. because the convention themselves are not what is good and what is bad. They're just arbitrary standards which change from time to time, from culture to culture, from tribe to tribe. So why don't we look at what's there without referring to old-fangled standards about what I should be like, or what I should present to the outside? Because that is the straitjacket in which we live. It causes us so much pain and discomfort, tremendous drain of energy. Which is released, this drain of energy required to present to ourselves and the outside world an ideal image. This energy is available for looking if the dependence and attachment to this image collapses. Then there's energy to look at what happens from moment to moment, for moments at a time. Not to get entangled in the ideal of all the time. Someone asked that this morning. There was moments of real undivided listening, and then the question, can this last forever or all the time? Can one see the thought arising? And with the thought, the wanting, the longing for an ideal state. And at that moment, where is the openness of listening? It's already narrowed down into the channel of me being like that forever or for a long time. And we're not blaming, we're just looking at it. Not saying that's wrong, but it's what goes on. So in looking oneself and looking together, talking together, is it possible to open up? Even at the risk of hurting? Because what one sees or what is pointed out is not what one wants to be there, and then the immediate reaction of hurt. And follow that hurt, not let it take over the mind with all of its branches and twigs and vines. Because then we're off looking, then we're in the hurting network, which has with it the defense, defending oneself. Part of the defense is attacking, either withdrawing in defense or attacking the person who pointed out something. Well, you too are not any better, or, which is true. We're all hurt, we all are defensive. But let each of us see that for ourselves. If one gets away from looking at hurt and defense into attack, then a precious opportunity of following the thing all the way is lost in the escape of attack or revenge, or else enclosure, closing up, pulling up the drawbridge. People tell me at times it's impossible not to get hurt. I've worked at this for years and years, and yet somebody says something or does something to me and I get hurt. Well, that's not the end, is it, getting hurt? How quickly can one look? And wonder and listen to this unfolding process of hurt and defense now that it has set into motion. Just because it has happened for the 10,000th time doesn't mean it can't be seen this time as it unfolds, and in the seeing, the fuel is gone. In the looking, in the questioning, in the seeing. Fantasy, which fuels hurt, imagery, which sustains it and maintains it, can't sustain itself in looking and questioning. It's a different kind of energy, which does not depend on imagery and memory, but on looking. That's the shift that takes place the moment we become interested in something and say, well, let me find out. You don't have to say it. It can happen without words, but here we're spreading it out verbally, but also non-verbally. The moment there's awareness of this hurt that happened, what I did or what somebody else did, and it hurts, I don't want to look like that. Don't want to appear like that. Be seen like that. People may talk about me, or all kinds of ramifications to this hurt, which is fed by imagery, isn't it? Imagining people to talk about me. Imagining that because the person said this, he or she doesn't love me, doesn't like me. There's a lot of fantasy and thought and image involved in what perpetuates and deepens the hurt. But in looking what is happening, wondering about this thing has gone on all my life, and I'm going to look right now. I've got to find out about this. All of a sudden, imagery and fantasy are not in place at all. They're irrelevant. To feel the breathing or hear the crickets or feel a pain someplace, wherever it may be, in the knees, back, or heart, or head, fantasy is not helpful. Can one see that? Listening, feeling it, being there, undivided, without conflict, is a different mode, a different energy. And because fantasy is not operating when there's looking and listening, therefore the hurt isn't continuously fed, and therefore it abates in due course. Can one test that out for oneself? Go with it. Here we're talking together, and we can do it together, but it's also possible to do it alone. The habit to stay with a hurt is very strong, has tremendous momentum, the energy of all of our lifetime and that of everybody else. To stay with hurt, to stay with grievance, to get one's just due, to defend, close off, or attack. That's the story of our lives, the life of humanity. played out on the global scale and in brutal wars. A war of teaching others a lesson. Not allowing one's pride to suffer hurt or indignation. There's very little we can do about a global war in a distant country. But can one look at hurt and look so closely and intensely that the habitual reactions don't take over immediately, or if they've taken over already, to look at them, what they're doing to ourselves and to our relationship with each other. Study it, learn about it in depth, not in order to become a better person, but to find out clearly what this person is, who represents all human beings. Is a sample. We're a sample of everyone. That can be tested here at home. Particularly in a retreat with its quietness and openness. The care that is given by everyone in doing the food, the cleaning. The garden, the trails. There's palpable care here everywhere. So we can look, it's all right. Find out about ourselves as we are this moment and not be shattered or distracted or distorted by all these images that we feel we have to project. And to see the attachment to those images and to question whether that has to continue. Seeing the pain that this arouses. Not just pain, but separation from each other. When my image is hurt, I can't look you directly into the eye. Because I see you as an offender, as a hurter, as who knows what. So, what is our relationship with each other? In this retreat, and outside of retreat. The fact, what many people report to me, that the heart starts beating the closer one gets to the seat, which is the next one to come into the room, that is manifestation of old conditioning. And to see it as that, to listen to it as that. Because there's really nothing to be afraid of. We're just looking at things together or sitting quietly together. I'm not expecting anything of anyone. That's a fantasy again. and separation. There's enough here. So, in this situation in which the heart does begin to beat and one does have anticipations, old-fangled expectations of the meeting, the person in there, can one become aware of these processes as they are triggered and allow the awareness to take care? Which means just, this is how it is, not I shouldn't be like that. I don't want to be conditioned. That's just words. But what is really there? As one sits outside the meeting room and in the meeting room, two people meeting each other, can we meet? Can we meet? Empty-handed? Not as this or that. And if this or that comes up, can it be illumined in awareness as this or that and not make any more out of it? The imagery that comes up from olden times, maybe from recent times. And discovering the difference between relating to an image, an imagined personage, and the directness of relationship which has nothing to do with imagination, but with the immediacy of being there together. See, this work, what we call this work, for lack of a better word, has nothing to do with attaining, with acquiring, with getting someplace, becoming someone. It has everything to do with throwing light on these processes which have moved us for thousands of years, trying to attain, to become, to acquire. And where are we after these thousands of years? Because thought does say, doesn't it, well, if there's nothing to attain, nothing to acquire, then what is there? What is there? Well, that's the question. Find out. What is there? This moment of not reaching out to get something or to run away from something. What is there? We will end here for today.